Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos of Mem Aleph. Right on top of the Daf says the Gemara of Omar Rab Zera. Ano chazite l'Rabavo. I observed a Ravo when he went to the river to bathe. Sheiniach yodav keneged the panav shalmata. He placed his hands opposite the panav shalmata, the bottom face, meaning opposite the aver habris, the male organ. V'lo yodana, but I'm uncertain whether inoga, iloinoga, whether he did or he didn't touch. Says when pshita de linoga, it's obvious that he didn't touch the aver. Why? The sanya, we learned in the Brisa that one is not meant to do so. Reb Lezer oimer kol eiches ba'amo umashtin, one who holds on to the aver while he urinates. Kilu maybe mabul oilam. It's as though he brings a mabul to the world, because by doing so, this can arouse him and bring him to a mid zerel v'atola, which was the chait, the kilkel of the dar hamabul, which brought about the mabul. So one may not do so. So what's the question whether he touched or not? Says the Gemara Omar Abaye, Asuha k'veileshes. We considered this incident with Ravo when he went down to the river. We equated it to the din of beileshes, and since we equated it to beileshes, that would allow Ravo to actually be noga. Why? Explains the Gemara. This non, as we learned in the Mishnah, beileshes is this group of soldiers who are coming to loot, to plunder. Beileshes shenichnas ha'le'ir, they entered the city. Bishas shalom, when it was peacetime, time of peace, not a time of war, then the halacha is chaviyos psuchos asuros. The barrels of wine which were open are also concerned that the goyim came over and they were menasech, they poured it for the avodah zarah, so it's asur. Stumois mutaris, but if they're closed up, they're sealed, then we have no concern and they're permitted. So this is if they arrived bishas shalom. What about bishas milchama, during wartime, when they're preoccupied and distracted? Elu ve'elu mutaris, both of them are mutar, whether open or closed. Lefi she'ein p'nai l'nasech, because they don't have the peace of mind to go ahead and pour this wine for the zara. They're distracted by the fright of the war. Alma, says the Gemara, apparently kivan the be'isi, since they're full of fright on account of the war experience, Loi menaschi, they don't pour the water. We're not concerned that they'll do nisach avodah zarah. Therefore, the wine is mutter. Hachanami, here too, regarding Ravo when he went to bathe in the river. Given the boys, since he's afraid, Loi asi le'erhuri, won't bring him to arouse, won't come to hear, won't come to bring him to improper thoughts, even if he touches the aver. Therefore, says the Gemara, this forms the basis of Reb Zera's uncertainty. I don't know whether or not he touched. Since it was a situation of be'isa, situation of pachad, there's no concern with touching the aver. It won't bring him to hirer, won't bring to arousal or to zerel v'atola. Says Gemara, v'hacha might be a susa. In our case of bathing in a river, what type of fear is there? Says Gemara, be a susa de nahara, fear of the river. It's a dangerous place. It can drown in the river. So there's a fright, there's danger, there's pachad, there's fear. And therefore, in this case, the negia ba'amad, the negia ba'aver, doesn't bring to hearer, doesn't bring to chimum, to arousal, and there's no concern. Says the Gemara, Eini, is that so? That he actually covered over the aver? V'omar avava, omar apuna, omar ab, kol aminiach yodav, keneged panav shalmata, one who goes ahead and covers the aver, kilu koifer b'brisa shel Avram Avinu, as though he's denying and rejecting the bris of Avram Avinu, the covenant of Avram Avinu, because he's hiding the bris. He doesn't want to expose his bris. It looks like he's shamed, he's embarrassed with the fact that he has a bris. Rashi says, Niro kushu boish b'davar. Looks like he's embarrassed of it. So he's not meant to cover his bris. So how can we say that perhaps that Ravo actually covered his bris? We're not sure whether he touched it, but he covered the bris. One is not meant to do so. Says the Gemara like Kash, it's not difficult. It depends where. Haki nochis, haki solik. Depends if he's going down to the river or he's already on his way up. So if he's on his way down, when there's nobody there, he's not exposing himself to the public, in that case, certainly he's not meant to cover himself. Covering oneself in that situation would denote that he has shame, he has busha from the fact that he has a bris. Haki Nachis, this is on the way down. But Haki Solik. But this halacha, this situation, this story of Ravo, he covered himself, this was Ki Solik on the way up from the river, when Rashi says, Panav Klapi he was facing the public. In this case, it's allowed. Why, says Rashi, Mishum Tznius, on account of modesty. It says Merkiha, the Rava Shachi, Rava would go bent down even towards the river. Or Rav Zera would go down, standing straight up, so that he shouldn't cover his bris at all. It shouldn't look as if he's being kaifer and denying, rejecting the bris. Now Rashash points out, why was Rava bending down? One is not meant to cover himself if it's on the way to the river. Says Rashash, because he figured that merely bending oneself over, crouching, is not considered to be actually showing that he's embarrassed and ashamed of his bris. He's not really actually covering your elbow properly. He's merely bending down. So Rava felt that wasn't a concern of appearing like he's being kaifer, even if it's on the way down to the river. Continues the Gemara, Rabbanan ve'Ravashi, the Rabbanan the Besmesh Ravashi, ki konachse zakfi. When they were on the way down to the river, then they would go down erect, standing upright, without covering themselves. Ki salki, but on the way up, shachi, they would actually bend down to cover themselves on account of tznius, of modesty. So in conclusion, regarding panav shalmata, the aver habris, negia is asur, except if it's b'makom pachad, then on account of the fright, of the fear, the negia won't bring him to hearer, won't bring him proper thoughts, and to anything wrong. What about covering oneself, covering the aver habris? Generally, it's asur because it appears as though he's being kaifer b'bris shalom ravinu. He's shamed and embarrassed on account of the bris that is on him. But if it is keneged the he's facing the public, in that case it is mutar mishum tznius. Continues the Gemara. Reb Zera hava kamishtamet. He was trying to avoid Rav Yehuda. He was getting away from Rav Yehuda. Why? Because the boy lemesak, because Reb Zera wanted to go up to ascend la'aretz Yisrael. He wanted to move to Eretz Yisrael, and therefore he avoided Rav Yehuda. The Amar Rav Yehuda, kol ha'olam mibavel Eretz Yisrael over be'esei. Rav Yehuda maintains, Rav Yehuda said, that if one who goes up from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, prior to the redemption, prior to the Geula, he actually transgresses an essay. Shenamar bavela yevo v'shamayiyu. The pasuk says that Hashem told them, "You meant to be brought to Bavel and stay there until I come get you." So Reb Zera, who wanted to go to Yisrael, avoided Reb Yehuda, so that he doesn't decree on him that he forbid him from going to Yisrael. So he said, nevertheless, I want to go hear something from him before I go to Yisrael. Omar, he said, Ezel, let me go let me go hear something from him. Edvar Chachma, ve'esi, I'll come back ve'esik, and then I'll go to Yisrael. Azal, he went Ashkei, he found him. The Koi Bani, he was standing in the bathhouse. The Omar Le'Shame, he was ordering to his servant as follows: Haviuli Nesa, bring for me this type of soap. Haviuli Masrek, a comb. So this he said in Lashon Kodesh, but then he proceeded in Aramaic. Pischu Pumaichu Va'afiku Hevla. Open your mouths and breathe in the steam of the bathhouse. Pischu Pumai, open your mouth. Va'afiku Hevla. And by inhaling the steam, this will help the body eject its own steam, its own sweat, discharge its steam and sweat. So this is something which is apparently what one is meant to do in the bathhouse. These are instructions not for just himself. He was giving an order, he was giving advice to everybody there. Ve'ashtu mimai devebani, and drink from the water of the Beis HaMerchatz. The Gemara will explain the reason for all this. So this was the instructions that Rav Yehuda issued. So Reb Zera was listening to all this, and he exclaimed, Amar, he said, Il male, if not for the fact, lo basi, el lishmoi davar dayet, if not for the fact that I only came to hear this, lo basi, il male basi, lil el lishmoi davar dayet, it's enough, it's sufficient. On account of the lessons I gleaned from these instructions. So the Chiddush Reb Lezer Moshe Horowitz says, why did he change the language? Why did he begin with Lashon Kodesh and then proceeded with Aramaic? So he says that the first part of Vilu Nes Vilu Masrik was for himself, but then when he went ahead and he advised, he wanted to impart this good advice, So he wanted everybody to understand, so he switched over to Aramaic so that everybody could understand. Pischa, Pimayichu, etc. Okay, now they're going to analyze this discussion, these orders from Rabbi Yehuda. Bishlam, it's understandable. If you Neser, if you Masrek, we understand why this was so significant to Rav Zera. What lessons did he glean from this? Kamashmal, he learned from this. Dvaram Shalchoil, Mutal Oimram Lashon Kodesh. That non-sacred content, secular content, can be said even using the holy tongue Lashon Kodesh. It can even be said, expressed in Lashon HaKodesh, even in the Beis HaMerchatz, as we discussed in Daf Mem, that in the Beis HaMerchatz, Beis HaKisei, one is allowed to speak in Lashon Kodesh. It's the content that determines. If the content is Torah and Tefillah, it can't be expressed in these places, even if it's Lashon Chayil, if it's secular language, if it's English. But if the content is not Kodesh, if it's merely briefly a soap or a comb, that can even be said in Lashon Kodesh. So this was a lesson which Rav Zera learned from Yehuda. So he was very pleased to hear this. Okay, so this is the first part. What about the rest of the instructions? What was so significant regarding those things? So Gemara proceeds, Pischo Pumaych, when he said, open your mouths, Apiku Hevla, so inhale the steam, and this will allow you to exhale, to discharge your steam, your Hevel Shel Zeya, Rashi says, your sweat and body heat. So this too, says the Gemara, is very beneficial. Nami, this is also very good, Kiddush Shmuel. As Shmuel told us, Damar Shmuel, Havla Mapik Havla. So the Hevel, the steam from the Beis HaMerchatz, which is inhaled, ingested, it influences, it gets the body to discharge its own Hevel, so you exchange a good Hevel for a bad Hevel. And it's beneficial, it's healthy. Ella Ishtumaya, the Bani, when he said, go drink the water of the Beis HaMerchatz, my Mal Yusuf, what was so good about that? Says more, indeed, that also is beneficial to one's health. The Sani, as we learned, one who eats without drinking, dam, it's not a good practice. It's considered that his food is considered to be blood. Apparently, it's not too beneficial to him. It doesn't get digested properly, etc. This initiates the ailments of the intestines. If he eats without walking 4 amos, Rashi says it's referring to specifically before he goes to sleep. So you have to walk at least 4 amos after eating, before sleeping. If he doesn't do so, so the food it rots, it doesn't really get digested properly. This initiates, this causes bad breath. One who resists relieving oneself prior to eating, it's equivalent to a oven. Which was heated on top of its old ashes. He hadn't cleared it properly before initiating the new fire, bringing the new wood, the new fire. A person is meant to clear a system prior to sitting down to a meal. This brings about a bad odor from his body. Rashi says his body is mezuam bezeya tamid. He has sweat and it brings about a bad smell. So if one washes himself in hot water, bathes in hot water, but doesn't drink from that hot water, says the Gemara, it's analogous to a oven, which was heated from the outside, but wasn't heated from the inside, so it's useless. There's no point. Here too, one bathes and uses hot water to bathe himself. It's not sufficient that he bathes himself from the exterior. He's meant to bring the hot water into his interior as well, so that the chamin, the hot water, permeates and goes through, not just affects the exterior, but comes through the body into the interior of the body as well. Now the Yavitz points out that how can one drink in the bathhouse when they're undressed? Can't make a bracha. So he suggests that since the purpose of drinking is merely for the refuah, it's part of the bathing process. It's not meant for hana. So he says there's no bracha required. Interesting. Okay, the Brisa continues. Rachatz b'chamen. So if one bathes with hot water, but afterwards he doesn't rinse himself off with cold water. Doime, it's equivalent to a barzel, to an iron. Shechnesu l'or was placed inside the fire. Chnesu l'ur, v'lo yechnesu l'tzoynem, but after was not put into cold water. That's the process. First you soften it up with the fire, then you harden it, you galvanize it by putting it into cold water. So the tzoynem, the rinsing with cold water, it completes the bathing process, it strengthens the person, it's beneficial to one's health. Finally, says the Brisa, rochatz v'lo yisach, if he bathes but doesn't anoint himself with oil, it's equivalent to pouring water on top of the outside of a chavis, of a barrel, and it doesn't actually penetrate the chavis, it doesn't go to the inside of the chavis. Rashi says, here too the bathing process doesn't permeate the person, doesn't penetrate the person unless he also anoints himself with oil. Apparently, first comes ruchitza and then comes sicha, to help absorb the effect of the bathing process. So indeed, this brisa tells us that when he bathes, it's not sufficient to bathe the exterior of the person. One meant to also drink some of the chamin to ingest the bring in the effect of the hot water into the person as well. Indeed, this corroborates what Rabbi Yehuda told them to make sure to drink some of the hot water as well. Okay, continues the Gemara. Mulyar Hagorf Shoisin Heimenu b'Shabbos. When we drink the hot water that's contained in this mulyar on Shabbos. Now, what exactly is this mulyar Hagorf? It's a sort of a kettle which had a compartment for hot water, and around that, surrounding this compartment, they placed the coals. So it had another compartment for the coals. Now, this mulyar, which was gorf, meaning the coals were cleared away before Shabbos. The Mishnah tells us one may drink from the hot water contained in this compartment on Shabbos. Now, what could be wrong with doing that? Explains Rashi, even though the water is heated a bit as a result of the surface of the walls of the mulyar, which were heated from the coals, nevertheless, says Rashi, this is not considered to be a davar hamoisiv hevel. We know that one may not do it hatmana, he may not insulate food using material which is moisiv hevel, which imparts heat, which emits heat, which generates heat. Says Rashi, this doesn't fall into that category. Why? Because the walls of this mulyar are not being moisiv hevel, but merely they are meshamer umikayim chayim shalem shlo yitztananu. They're merely maintaining the heat level that the water shouldn't cool off. Therefore, one may use this on Shabbos. Continues the Mishnah. What about antiki? That's a different type of contraption which has a much higher degree of heat, a more intense heat. Says the Mishnah, in that case, even though the coals were cleared away, one cannot drink from that on Shabbos. That is considered to be a davar hamoisiv hevel, which emits and generates heat, and atmana, that is also. Continues the Gemara, what exactly, how is this mulyar designed? Says the Gemara, Tani, we learned in the Brisa, we have the water on the inside, and surrounding that are the coals. What is the antiki? We have a machlokes. Rabba and Beikiri. It's this double stove. It's this stove that has two compartments. So they put one in one compartment. They fill it with coals. The other compartment with water. Explains Rashi, since this stove is being heated throughout the whole week, so the walls of the stove are very hot. The heat is very intense, and therefore, even if you clear those coals, there are no coals present any longer. It is gorof. Nevertheless, the walls of this kira are considered to be moisiv, heavily emitting heat, and therefore one might not use the water contained in the compartment which was adjacent to the compartment of the coals. It's actually referring to a different type of thing. Beidudi, it's referring to a double-tiered pot. So we have a pot and a double bottom. In the second bottom, in the lower level, they would place those coals. Here too, the coals generate such intense heat into the impart so much heat into this dudi, into this double vat, double pot, and the walls of this pot have such a high degree of heat that the heat that they impart is considered to be moisiv hevel, and one may not use this on Shabbos. Says in Ramayanda Amar Beidudi, the opinion that translates of Nachman Yitzchak, who defines the antiki as being the Beidudi, the pot with the double bottom, Koshke Mekir, certainly he would apply the same concept to the double stove, to the stove that has these compartments that are adjacent to each other, which maintains a very high level of heat. So if the Beidudi is Aser, and it's considered to be a Davar Ma'asav Hevel, certainly the Beikiri is. Uma'andam Beikiri, however, the Shita, Rabbu says that Antiki is referring to the Beikiri, this double stove. Avo Beidudi loy. However, regarding a Beidudi, the double pot, that heat there is not so intense, and this halacha would not apply there. It only applies to the stove. Continues the Gemara, Tanika Vaseder of Nachman. We have a brayso in support, which corroborates Rav Nachman's definition of Antiki. Says the brayso, Antiki afal b'shegrufa ktuma, even though it is shoveled, the coals are shoveled or covered over, ktuma covered over, ain't shaysin men, a woman not use it, a woman not drink from this Antiki. Why? The brayso gives us a reason. Pnei shenechashta mechama masa, because the bottom, the nechashta is referring to its bottom. It heats it up. It continues generating heat. So apparently we're speaking about a pot, a vat, which has a double bottom. That is the definition, a true meaning of the word antiki. So in summary, if we have a utensil with the coals shoveled away, garf migacholim. So it depends if it's a mulyar, which is this kettle which has the mayim bifnim, and the gecholim surrounding it from the outside. If the coals were cleared, according to all shitas, he may use this on Shabbos. It's not a davar ma'asav hevel. It's only maintaining the heat of the water. If it's an antiki, the Mishnah says that cannot be used. What is the definition? We have a machlekes. According to Rav, it's referring to a beikiri. This is a type of stove which has two compartments adjacent to each other. One has the coal, one has the water. So that is called the ma'asav hevel and cannot be used on Shabbos. According to Rav, the beidudi may be used on Shabbos. The pot with the double bottom, that's okay. According to Nachman bar Yitzchak, the antiki is referring to beidudi, the pot with the double bottom, a double-tiered, a two-tiered pot. That is considered to be a ma'asav hevel, on account of the intense heat found in the walls of the pot as a result of the coals that were present underneath. According to Nachman bar Yitzchak, certainly a beikiri falls into the same category and one may not be used on Shabbos even after the coals are cleared. Now Rashi learns that the context of this Mishnah is the halacha of hatmana, and hatmana, wrapping, insulating a food item with material that is ma'asav hevel, is also on Shabbos. Taisus asks on Rashi, where's the hatmana? Where's the wrapping? Where's the insulating? He's merely using the water which is present in its own independent compartment. There's no wrapping taking place. So Taisus concludes in the name of Yerushalmi, which learns the Mishnah differently. Yerushalmi learns that we're speaking about the halacha of bishul here, that the water contained in the mulyar hagarif, this type of kettle which has a lower level of heat. The water in there can be poured, can be used to dilute wine, can be poured onto wine, and is not considered to be bishul because the heat level is not so intense. However, the antiki, on account of its high level of heat, one may not pour from that antiki onto wine because that is considered to be bishul. The Ran has a similar approach. The Ran says that the mulyar does not have a din of a klirisha, the water contained in the compartment. It does not have a din of it's not present in a klirisha. And klirisha is the initial kli where the water is cooked, like a pot on a stove, on a flame, which has a din of bishul. One may not put something into a klirisha. The klirisha has the power to cook, as we learned in Daf Mem. Says the Ran, the mulyar doesn't have that status since the compartment is not situated directly on top of the coals, so it doesn't achieve such a high degree, such an intense level of heat. The coals are merely surrounding the compartment. Therefore, says the Ran, one may pour something into this compartment. It's not considered to be a klirishin. However, the antiki that achieves a very high level of heat on account of its intense heat is considered to be a klirishin, and one may not pour anything into that klirishin for concern of the malacha of bishul. Continues the next Mishnah. Hameicham shepino. We have a kettle which was cleared. The Gemara will explain exactly what these words mean. So the meicham was cleared, the kettle was cleared. Lo yitin l'sechet soinen. He may not place cold water into this b'shvil sheyichamu, so that it heats up. Avol noisnu l'seicha, but he may place in it or into a cup kadesh lafshiran, merely to warm it up. So the one might come, what's going on here? First of all, what is hameicham shepino? He cleared it. What do you mean he cleared it? Also, the Mishnah tells us first lo yitin, he shouldn't put. Then the Mishnah says avol noisin, he does put. So, how do you explain the Mishnah? Maikam Omar Ravada B'Masna. Hochi Kamar. This is how we're meant to interpret the Mishnah. Hameicham shepino mimenu mayim chamim. a hot water kettle where the water was clear, he was emptied of its water. So the kettle is still hot. He cannot pour into it a small measure of water, which will result in the water heating up, cooking up. It's a malacha bishul. But he can pour a whole bunch of water, a large measure of water, which will result in the water only warming up a bit. Since he's pouring a large amount of water into this hot kettle, it won't have the ability to cook it up, to heat it up. This large amount of water will merely warm up, which is not considered to be bishul. Says the Gemara, okay, according to Rav Ava, we're speaking about a mecham, which was clear of water. It's an empty kettle, and it's hot. Therefore, a bit of water cannot be poured in there because it's heating up the water. It's bishul, but a lot of water doesn't get heated up, and the cold water merely warms up, and that's not bishul. Says the Gemara, what about the malacha of mitzaref? What about the malacha? Mitzaref, he's hardening it. He's galvanizing the metal mecham, the iron mecham, because when the iron heats up with fire, it softens, and then when he pours cold water into it, he's hardening it. That's a malacha. What is the malacha? The malacha of makeh b'patish, the last blow. This is a reference to putting on the finishing touches onto an otherwise completed vessel. Makeh b'patish. So pouring this cold water into this piping hot kettle, this empty kettle, which was softened by the experience of being placed on the fire. So I pouring that hot water, he's being mitzaref, he's galvanizing, he's hardening. That's a malacha. Says, well, that's not a problem. Rav Shimon, Rav Ava is following the sheet of Rav Shimon, who tells us the Amar Davar Shem Iskav Mutter. One does an act of Maisa, which results in a secondary act of a malacha being performed. But this wasn't his initial intention. His kavanah was merely to do the primary act, which was not a malacha. According to Rav Shimon, it's okay. It's a davar she'em miskaven. He has no intention for the incidental act. It's not considered to be part of his initial kavanah, part of his initial ma'aseh. It's a davar she'em miskaven. Here too, he has no kavanah, his own intention to be mitzaref, to galvanize, to harden this kettle. He really wants to pour the warm water, the cold water into the kettle to warm it up, and therefore it is mutter. Now Tosfos points out that even though according to Rav Shimon, if the resulting malacha is inevitable, it's asur. For instance, the Gemara uses a lashon of psik reisha v'lo. Can you chop off the head of a chicken and expect it not to die? It's inevitable. So if one performs a ma'aseh, it does an act which carries with it an inevitable secondary act, which is a malacha. Even according to Shimon, that's asur. It's called a psik reisha. Says Tosfos. Evidently, our case is not a psik reisha. It's not inevitable. Explain to Mefarshim why. Because it's not muchach, it's not inevitable that tziruf will take place. Perhaps the kettle was already sufficiently hardened beforehand. Perhaps the fire didn't really soften it. Therefore, it's not inevitable. It's not clear cut. It's not obvious that this tziruf will take place, and therefore it has the halacha davar she'ein miskaven, something which he has no intention to do, and it's mutter. So again, according to Rava's approach in the Mishnah, mecham shepino means the mecham, the kettle which was cleared of its water. When we pour into it cold water, but only a lot at a time, which will result in merely warming the water, but not a bit, which will result in heating up the water. Regarding tziruf, there's no concern because he has no intention to harden it. Maskef le Abaye. Abaye challenged this. Midi mecham shepino mimenu ma'im ktani. Does the Mishnah say a mecham, a kettle, shapino mimenu mayim, that he cleared the water out of it? Is that what it says in the Mishnah? Mecham shapino tani. The Mishnah says a mecham shapino, who that it was cleared, meaning it was cleared, it itself was removed, was cleared from the fire. Ela Abaye, rather this is how we're going to interpret the Mishnah. This is what the Mishnah means to say. A mecham shapino, a kettle which was removed off the fire, and contains some hot water within it. It's not an empty kettle, it's full of water. You cannot pour into it a bit of cold water, because this will result in the cold water heating up. And it's a malacha. But rather, he can pour a large measure of cold water into it at once, which will result in a mixture which is really warm, meaning there won't be a chimim, there won't be a bishul taking place. Umeicham shapinu mimenu mayim, but certainly a kettle where the water was cleared, it's an empty kettle. In that case, lo yiten lesoicha mayim kol ikar. There's no way he can pour water into it, cold water, because indeed he's hardening it. It's a malacha. Even though he has no intention for this malacha, it's a davar shemiskaven. We're following sheets of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar davar shemiskaven aser. So Abai interprets the Mishnah in accordance with sheets of Rabbi Yehuda that only if the meicham has some water in it, in that case he can pour a large amount of water into it, which will result in the mixture merely warming up. But a bit of water you can't, because then the water will cook up. However, if the meicham is totally clear of water, it's empty. In that case, don't pour any cold water into it, because this will result in a malacha. He'll be mitzaref, he's hardening, galvanizing the metal. And it's also, even though he has no intention of doing that, malacha, in accordance with Shittas of Yehuda, that it's also. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav. Again, how are we going to interpret our Mishnah? It says, Rav lo yishanu. This heter of a meicham shepino, he's allowed to pour cold water into it. That is only said ella lahafsher. If he's pouring water into it to warm it up, aval sarif. But if the kettle is cleared of its water, and by pouring the water into it, the cold water will harden it, that's asr. Ushmuel Amar, Shmuel disagrees. He says afilu tzarif nami mutar. Even if he's going ahead and hardening the kettle, galvanizing the kettle, that's also mutar. Says Gemara, let's it appears from Shmuel's words, he's insinuating that he can go ahead and intentionally harden this kettle, galvanize it. Is that allowed? The chatchila mishari? Ella, rather, we meant to learn the machlekes a little differently. Ella itmar hachitmar. If we learned the machlekes in Rav and Shmuel, we meant to learn it in this way. Amar Rav lo yishanu. This heter, this allowance is only ella shir lahafshir. So according to Rav, we're speaking about the kettle, which was cleared of its water, just the way Rav Ada bar Ava learned the Mishnah. Pino means pino mimenu. He cleared out the water from it. It's an empty kettle, so you can pour some water into it, but only shir lahafshir, meaning he can pour a large measure of water into it, which will result in the water merely warming up, but he can't fill it up. Aval shir litzaref aser. But if he's filling it up to the brim, in that case, the filling process will harden the kettle. Because once he fills it up to the brim, explains it in Yeshua, the brim area is the part that gets softened as a result of the exposure to the fire, because the lower part which contains the water, the water doesn't allow it to reach the high level of intensity of heat, which softens the kettle. So it's regarding the upper portion near the rim, where the concern of tziruf is prevalent. Therefore, Rav says he can't fill up the entire kettle up to the rim with cold water, because that will result in the tziruf taking place. Ushmuel Amar, no, there's no concern there as well. I feel a shir l'tzaref, even if he fills up a large measure of water up until the rim, which will result in tziruf, it's also mutter, because he has no intention, he has no kavanah. Why? Because Shmuel is following the sheet of Reb Shimon, who holds davar she'en miskaven is mutter. He has no intention for this, and therefore it's mutter. Rav, however, is following the sheet of Yehuda, who holds davar she'en miskaven is aser. Even though he has no intention of doing tziruf, of hardening the kli, it's aser, because nevertheless tziruf results from his maisa, and it is aser. So let's make a summary of the various interpretations of our Mishnah. We have Rav Ada bar Ava, we have Abaye, we have Rav, and we have Shmuel. Let's start with Rav Ada bar Ava. The Mishnah tells us meicham shepino. Said Rav Ada, it's referring to the meicham, which was cleared of water. It's an empty meicham. The Mishnah tells us he may not place a little bit of water, which will result in the water heating up from the walls of the meicham, which are hot, but he can place a large measure of water into there, which will merely result in warming up, lahafshir, even though it can result in tziruf, and hardening the kettle. This is according to the Shita of Shimon, who holds davar she'en miskaven is mutter, since it has no intention to harden it, it's mutter. Abaye says, no, meicham shepino means that the actual meicham, the kettle, was cleared from the fire. Pina me'alaor, and it still has the hot water in it. It's not an empty kettle, it contains hot water. The Mishnah tells us he can pour a lot of water, a lot of cold water into this kettle, with the resulting mixture merely warming up, lahafshir. But if the kettle is empty, you can't pour cold water into it, because one is not allowed to do tziruf. Abaye is found in the Shita of Yehuda, who holds davar shein miskaven as aser. Rav says, Mecham shepino is meant to be interpreted like a rada ba'ava. The kettle which was cleared of its water, it's empty. Says the Mishnah. He can pour a large measure of water which will result in it merely warming up. But he can't actually fill it up completely, which this will result in siruf, and hardening the kettle. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that davar shein miskaven is aser, Shmuel says, no, davar shein miskaven is mutter like Reb Shimon. Therefore, the kettle which was cleared of water, he can fill it up with water, which will warm up the water, and also even if it results in tziruf, it's mutter, because it's a davar shein miskaven, and it's mutter. Okay, let's take a quick chazara of today's daf. We began with a relating of an incident where Rav Zera observed Rav going to the river, covering himself up, wasn't sure whether he was naga or loy naga. Gemara told us one generally is not allowed to touch the aver, but in a time of pachad, like going to the river, which involves a fear of the river, of drowning, it's a makam sakana. So in that case it's mutter, and the conclusion of the Gemara was regarding param shalmata, regarding the aver, negia is aser, but a makam pachad is mutter, regarding merely covering up oneself, that's also aser. It appears as though he's being kaifer, denying, rejecting the bris of Avraham Avinu. He's embarrassed, he's shamed on account of the bris that he's carrying on himself. However, if he's neged the if he's facing the public, in that case it's mutter, because it is tznius, on account of modesty. The Gemara gave us, told us a whole story with Rav Yehuda in the bathhouse, where he spoke Lashon Kodesh, where he imparted advice. He gave a good health advice regarding the various customs, various things that are meant to be done in the Beis HaMerchatz, things that are that carry a health benefit. The Mishnah continued regarding the Mulyar Hagaraf, and the conclusion was that there are two categories here. There's the Mulyar and there's the Antiki. The Mulyar is the kettle which has the water contained in a compartment and surrounded by coals. And in that case, if he cleared those coals, he was gorif those coals, one may use this Mulyar on Shabbos. And there's no concern, according to Rashi, there's no concern of Moisef Hevel. According to Tosis, there's no concern of Bishul. According to the Ran, there's no concern of a Bishul. It's not considered to be a Kli Rishon. However, this Antiki, which has a higher level of heat, that is Asr. We have two interpretations. What Rava says, the Antiki is the Bekiri. The two compartments which are adjacent to each other in the stove, one has the coals, one has the hot water. In that case, the level of heat is very intense, and one may not use it on Shabbos. Rav Nachman Yitzchak interprets Antiki as being a Beit Dudi, a pot with a double bottom which contains the coals underneath. In that case, again, the level of heat that is imparted, that is embedded in the walls of this pot, is very intense, and one may not use the water from within this pot on Shabbos. According to Rashi, it's considered to be Moisef Hevel. According to Tosis, it's Mavashal. According to the Ran, it's considered to be Kli Rishon. And the more concluded, according to Rabbah, who interprets Antiki as being the Beikiri, that's only regarding the Beikiri, which has a high level of heat, but the Beidudi, that's not a concern. That degree of heat is not so intense, according to Rachmi Yitzchak. If Beidudi falls into this category, certainly Beikiri, which has even higher level of heat. The Gemara proceeded telling us the halacha of the Mecham Shepino. We have four approaches. The Mishnah tells us that Mecham Shepino should not put a little bit of cold water into it, but he can place a lot in order to merely warm it up. We have four approaches. Rav Abba says we're speaking about a Mecham which was cleared of its hot water. It's an empty Mecham. He can place a lot of cold water into it, which will merely result in warming up of that water, even though it results in galvanizing this Mecham. It's a davar shein miskaven. Abaye says no, davar shein miskaven is asur. So we're speaking about a Mecham which has hot water, which was cleared from the fire, but it has hot water. And you can place a lot of cold water in it to warm up. But if the kettle is clear, is empty, you cannot place cold water into it, because this will result in tziruf, in galvanizing it. Rav interprets the words Mecham Shepino like the first approach, like Rav Bar Av was speaking about a Mecham which was cleared from its water. It's an empty Mecham. He can pour a lot of cold water into it to warm it up, and he cannot fill it up completely. This will result in tziruf. Shmuel says he can even fill it up completely, even though it might result in tziruf, because Shmuel is following the opinion of Reb Shimon, who holds davar she'enim yiskaven is mutter, since he has no intention of bringing about the siruf. The ma'aseh here is merely filling up the kettle. His intention is to warm up the water, and therefore the galvanizing process, the tziruf, is a davar she'enim yiskaven, and it's mutter.